I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:12. This is the May 5th, 2021 City Council meeting.
Okay.
And welcome to all of our listeners and people who are following us along. Visitors, we will have a visitor section down here in a little bit. If you would like to speak, please send an email to chadsweet@cityofyourheart.com. I noticed we do have our feedback session at the end of the meeting, specifically to get feedback on anything we've discussed during the meeting. Please limit those comments to 3 minutes. And with that, is there any declaration of conflict of interest from any of the councilors?
I have none.
Nope. I have none.
No conflicts here.
Harry,
Yes?
any conflict of interest? I didn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pauline. I answered first. I said no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. The April 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the council. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Approve the meeting of April 7th and the special city council meeting of April 12th.
I'll second it then.
So we're approving both sets of minutes, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any discussion about that? Hearing none, is there a motion to, all those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? Okay. No one opposed. And moving on to the Planning Commission report that was in the packet. Any comments on that from the council?
I have a question. At the very bottom, it talks about the Banta property, and it says the owners waived the 120-day requirement to August 3rd. What does that mean?
I can answer that question. So if you apply for, once you have a complete application, then the jurisdiction has 120 days to basically approve or deny the application. So what happens is people turn in all of their materials, and the city has a 30-day period to do what's called a completeness evaluation. And either that it's a complete application or there's some more detail that the jurisdiction needs. At that point, they can decide whether to provide the additional detail or say, no, you've got as much as we're going to give you. And from that decision point, when the city either has a complete application or is told that no additional materials are going to be delivered, then the city has 120 days to process the application. That 120-day clock acts for the benefit of the applicant, so they can choose to waive it and give the jurisdiction more time. The jurisdiction itself can't say, hey, we're not going to comply with 120 days. And if the decision hasn't been made by day 120, then the application is granted.
All right, thank you.
And moving on, the mayor's report. I just have a couple of things to report. First, our children's play equipment fundraising effort. As of this evening, we have raised $19,065. We also have coming in tomorrow the results of Berkeley Sturgill's quarter challenge. She went around the track a quarter mile and then some. And then I'm told her dad vacuumed up all the quarters. So I'm happy that I get to meet her finally tomorrow, and we'll have a good chat about her wonderful fundraising efforts. During the month, Chad and I met with one play equipment vendor from Portland, and I have received a couple of emails. One, I don't have the person's name, but she was asking that we think about inclusiveness primarily with regards to children with disabilities in our planning, and also one from Trails and Art community, and some concerns over potential noise. So we will certainly take that into consideration as well. My plea to please go get vaccinated. There are weekly clinics both on North and South County, and they are also widely available at some of the pharmacies. The only way we'll subdue the virus and stop the community spread, which, as you all know, we are restricted now to the high level, not extremely high, but we have cases every single day in this county, North County and South County. So please, 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 if you haven't considered getting a vaccine, please go to the county website or a pharmacy and get that taken care of. We are looking forward to trying to have a 4th of July parade again this year. It's going to have to be, at this point in time, with some social distancing and possibly masks. We'll see how that goes, but we are in the early planning stages. And I know Chad will probably need a few volunteers to help with crowd control. So if you're interested, you can shoot him an email. And looking at that, I've read quite a bit about the state may lift the state of emergency. Restrictions are going to be lifted over this summer, and if we don't vaccinate now, we're just going to be dealing with this virus for potentially months or years. It's just going to keep circulating. I did attend the Parks Master Plan Committee. We spent most of our meeting going over the data from our survey that we had. A couple of points I would just point out. First of all, I think the group felt that the responses from the community were reassuring that we are on the right track with what we're planning and going to be proposing. Also, we had a map of where the responses came from, and it was a little bit disappointing that residents on the east side of Highway 101 did not participate as much as we would have liked to have seen. There was a lot of participation in the south, I'll just say south of Pacific Way neighborhoods. So that might be something that we want to do a little something when we get to the phase where we're going to do another public comment, some sort of open house. Maybe we can reach out to folks who live east of the highway so we do get another chance to hear what their needs and concerns might be. Finally, I did meet with one of the other CERT members, Sharon Cloffer, with James Hutchinson. He is one of our firefighters. He's also called Hutch. And so he is going to be helping with the CERT program. And we had a really good meeting, and the CERT team is going to start meeting the end of this month, socially distanced and probably masked, and in the fire hall. We'll probably just actually move a couple of the trucks out and meet over there where we can have some cover if it's raining and still be socially distanced. And that's all I got for tonight. Any questions right now from counselors on that? Okay, council reports. Carrie Smith.
Okay, I've met with Jeff Bowman and we've talked about the homelessness issue. And that is going to be a long-term situation that we're going to deal with as far as developing any kind of program or tactical way of dealing with it, because of the state legislation is going to be passing some bills that will impact anything that we do. So we're not really going to be able to move forward until we get what the state has done. I'm also waiting for Peter's information from the other jurisdictions he's done homelessness projects with. And I also met with Jeff on the parking issue for the parks and the city, as far as RVs and parking on city streets. And that's all I've got.
Will we be able to update our parking ordinance in the shorter term?
Mayor, is that a question for me?
I would say yes, we can, and it's something that I can meet with you and discuss with you what the chief has expressed to me.
Okay. Rita?
Oh, well, I've been working with the Tree City USA folks, and they are sending me a manual on the viability of Gerhart becoming a Tree City USA. And in the manual, there will be guidelines and parameters and goals in working with ordinances on our tree ordinances. And I really want everyone to know that our focus is on saving the heritage trees, the really, really tall, old growth trees that we have. We really don't want to tell people what trees they can have in their yard and come down as the tree police. We just want to save our heritage trees and not become like Seaside, which cut down all their trees and they don't have that many anymore. So that's basically what I'm doing. And I should have had the manual by now, but I don't. So I can just say it's on its way. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Jesse. Dan, do you have a counselor's report?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get to the mute button. No, I'm good, thank you.
And Brent.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just spend a little bit of time on the Small Business Committee. Last meeting, I mentioned that we had a application process for adding additional body or bodies to our committee, and had an interesting turn of events. We had 3 applicants. One of them was a non-business owner, retired business person, and 2 Gerhart business owners who applied. Our last meeting, we were intending on reviewing those applications, and the committee came back and said, maybe we don't need additional people on our committee until we figure out if we're going to be a standing committee or continue to be an ad hoc committee. We're getting things done with the current 4-person committee that we have, so let's hold off. So that's what we did. Jenny Frank wrote a letter to the applicants thanking them for their interest and explained that we had gone in a different direction. Another one of our tasks is looking at the survey information. So we had a survey online for 45 days, and we had 23 responses and got lots of good feedback. I'm working on putting together a written summary report, which we will be reviewing in our committee first, and then we'll be presenting that to council probably next month. And that's about it.
Great. Thank you all for your efforts. These are all really great projects. City officer reports. Chief Bowman had his report in our, it came separately in a separate email. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. And the fire department also submitted their usual report. I did have a chance to discuss that with our interim chief, and just asking about that last column where it says no kind of like no aid given, and it's because of the program. There are very few choices that they can click a box, and so when that report, when it says no aid given, it's really not in context, because firefighters have arrived, they've provided aid, vital signs, some assessment, helped move patients if they are actually going to the hospital and need to be moved downstairs and things like that. So hopefully one day we'll get better reports, but I just, something I've thought about a lot. So
Madam Mayor, are you there?
yes.
Would you, speaking of better reports, would you like to introduce Chief Como? He is on the call.
Well, yeah. So Josh Como has taken the position of interim fire chief, and as I mentioned in my report, Hutch has taken the interim training officer position. And so, Josh, if you would like to have any further report, now would be the time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sweet, Madam Mayor, and City Council. I kind of typed up my notes. I want to be pretty thorough and not miss out on anything for you guys. Good evening. For those of you who do not know, my name is Josh Como, and I'm currently the interim fire chief while the city is going through the hiring process for the permanent chief's position. Last April, we had a very productive month. We had 55 calls, and we currently are on 195 calls total for the year. Last year at this time, we had 137 calls, so we are already 60 calls ahead of last year, which last year was also an average year for call volume for us. A couple incidents from last month I kind of wanted to highlight for you. We had a structure fire at the apartments on Pine Ridge. Our incoming fire apparatus pulled in at the same time as Seaside's ladder truck, which our protocol is throughout the county. Protocol is to stage the ladder truck first, just because of the size of the apparatus and where you have to put it. There was no injuries on that fire at all. We had a vehicle fire just north of the substation on the highway, also resulting in no injuries. We had a call last month. We were able to use our brand new Lucas device, which is a CPR machine. It does the compressions for you while you're performing CPR. The machine delivers very, very high quality CPR, and it frees up other personnel to work on other things. A quick side note for that, the Lighthouse Christian Church donated $15,000 for us to obtain the device. The call went very well. We arrived on scene. The patient did not have a heartbeat. Thanks to this great device, the person, last we heard, is at home recovering. We had automatic aid for structure fire in Seaside, same with one in Hamlet. We provided mutual aid for Warrenton while they were involved with their boat fire they had last month. During that time, we were covering Warrenton's district for fire and medical calls. We did the same thing for Seaside a couple times while they were taxed for personnel during their calls. As a quick reminder, we have automatic and mutual aid agreements with all departments in the county for multiple reasons. No one department in the county can handle complex calls on their own. On average, it takes 15 to 20 firefighters, 2 structural engines, and 1 ladder truck for a typical house fire. If that house is far away from a water source, we then have departments in the county, such as Gearhart has one. It's called a water tender. and their job is simply to transport the water and help complete firefighting efforts. We also have mutual aid agreements in place for when departments in the county do not have enough resources, such as manpower or personnel, to handle the call they have in front of them, and so we'll come and help our neighbors in that time of need. Last month, we gave aid, so we went out in mutual and auto aid 7 times. 5 of them went to Seaside, 1 was to Warrenton, 1 was to Hamlet. We received aid only 2 times last month. 1 was for the apartment fire, and 1 was for a medical call. We were short on manpower because at that time we were also clearing from 2 other calls we were on at the exact same time. It was brought to my attention, just like you said, Mayor, that while some of you are reviewing the call logs from previous months, there's that column on the far right that says basic aid given or received. Almost every time it'll say none on it. If the call had nothing to do with automatic aid or mutual aid, it will then say none. It does not mean we did nothing on the call. Even the standard medical call, the finely tuned machine is at work. We'll arrive before medics the majority of the time and start patient care to enable fast, effective life-saving efforts. Then we'll hand off primary care to medics, and then we'll assist them for the rest of the call, preparing and packaging the patient for transport, and even sometimes we ride along with medics in the ambulance if they need extra manpower. A couple of things we worked on from last month. This current month, May that we're in, is Mental Health Awareness Month. So in light of that, Mr. Sweet and I last month began working on a mental health program to offer help for our firefighters and our police officers here. We're continuing moving forward with our water rescue program. Currently, we're working under the umbrella of Seaside Fire. They have a very established water rescue program, and they're gracious training us so we can get our program up and running independently. Our wildland firefighter apparatus 2972, what we call the Fire Mog, it had some required fixing and maintenance completed on it. The work that was done was needed simply due to normal wear and tear of it. The cost was $10,000. But none of that came out of the city budget at all. All that money came out of conflags that went on last year. If you have any questions, concerns, I'd love to help answer them for you. I do need to get back next door and continue with the training over there. You can email me, joshcomo@citygearhart.com, and I look forward to communicating with you.
Thank you for that report.
Thank you, Josh.
Any questions right now?
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, you guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You too.
And we have our new Justine here, and we got our treasurer's report in our packet. Do you have any comments, Justine?
No comments. It's going well, and I appreciate everybody's support.
Great, thank you. And are there any other questions for Chad or Justine on the financials? Okay, next up is City Attorney Peter.
Okay, well, I've got a number of items for you. The first is there was some litigation I mentioned last meeting where the people had said they really didn't want to litigate, but then sued us, and then they said they really wanted to work it out, and then they said to cease and desist remediating the problem. So kind of some mixed messages there. But Chad and I got that tendered to CIS. We had a great phone call with the attorney that is handling that and got him up to speed. There's no easy solution to this problem because of the depth of the pipe and because the pipe, the system, everything else was engineered before the property was annexed into the city. The developer who most likely did it had sold all the property and is deceased. So there's really, we are sympathetic to the homeowner. There is, to us, not an obvious solution, but the good news is that our insurance carrier is handling it, so we don't have to worry about it quite as much. As far as the homeless issues go, as Councilor Smith mentioned, there is current legislation, House Bill 3115. It has passed the House on I think it was about a 34 to 25 basis. It currently is in the Senate at the Judiciary Committee. They've had their first public hearing, but unclear whether that's going to move or not. And I have some concerns about that bill just as far as its enforceability and how we're going to handle it. And the reason for that is because it says that a city's efforts around public camping must be objectively reasonable. And in the past, whether things have been reasonable or not, such as a noise ordinance, courts have invalidated that because it's like, how do you measure the reasonableness? I think that the speaker, who is the author and sponsor of the bill, hope in writing that language is that it would give like a facts and circumstances, since different cities have different resources, things of that nature, provide some flexibility. Again, my concern anytime there's ambiguity in the law, and this would be a state law and it would be a preemption, partial preemption because we'd have to allow some form of camping, but partially not preemption because we get to decide what's objectively reasonable. You know, that sometimes it's nice to have flexibility, but that is going to be really hard in order to determine whether we meet that test. So as Councilor Smith has mentioned, I am quite familiar with the Boise case, which was the first Ninth Circuit case, as well as the Grants Pass case. I co-taught a continuing legal education course with the then head of the ACLU on these issues and what I believe would be reasonable. This was prior to the Grants Pass case, which has given us a bit more detail. But what I would say is the most important thing as we go through this process and we craft a law is the record. So where cities get into problems with this, and I'll give you an example. The city of San Francisco passed the sit-lie ordinance, and sit-lie ordinances sometimes have been successful and sometimes have not. The San Francisco one was upheld, and the reason it was upheld is because San Francisco was able to show that multiple people that were housed were cited under this law. So for whatever reason, adjoining neighbors decided to sit or lie on the sidewalk and then were cited by the police. And so the city was able to show this was not this did not disproportionately, this wasn't a situation where everyone that got cited was houseless and that no one that was housed got cited. So the Grants Pass case, I cannot imagine a worse record. People were saying just incredibly hateful things. And I can't imagine a lawyer looking at that record and thinking to do anything other than to bring that back to the council and ask them to invalidate it. But that didn't happen. So we do have that law on the books. So as we're discussing these issues, the most important thing that we focus on is the health and safety of people, housed and houseless. And things, one of the things that I mentioned, because this continuing legal education course was in Portland, is that, Portland, if you have a tiny house in your backyard, that has to go through all the permitting and planning and comply with state building rules and all those rules. And these people that build structures that are unpermitted, and the city doesn't do any enforcement on that, those aren't built to the same public safety standards. And in my mind, the message that sends is that the lives of houseless people are less important than the lives of housed people, because why would you take steps to make sure that one group is housed, safely housed in a structure, and not do the same for the other? And so, that's why in my mind, allowing people to build structures or even tents that have stoves or other incendiary devices in them, if we do that and it's not permitted and then we permit others, we risk a selective enforcement action. And that's not what we want. And so I think that the key to threading the needle on all these issues is to be focused on health and safety. How do we keep everyone safe? How do we treat people equally? And, compassionately doing that while making sure that, we've taken steps to, for instance, sidewalks, that people aren't blocking a sidewalk because then someone that's disabled, in a wheelchair might have to go into the street, might get hit. So we can't have that. So it really comes down to talking about health and talking about safety and focusing on the safety of all people, understanding there are some places that are more dangerous than others. There's some places where there could be a fire. Other places, maybe there wouldn't be a fire if someone's camping and has an open flame. So I certainly think we can get through this process. I think before we start it, we're really going to have to see whether House Bill 3115 passes. And if it does pass, I'm going to have to do a dive into the legislative history and what the legislators intended and what their testimony was around this bill to better understand kind of their intent and how we can comply with that intent. I know from past land use cases, both in here, like short-term rentals, we were very focused on health and safety, and in other jurisdictions, that going through those steps and then being able to demonstrate to Louisville or the Court of Appeals or whoever it is, these are all the steps we went through to make sure that we were getting it right. And so both our intent, which was a health and safety intent, not a punitive intent, as well as the steps that we went through to try and achieve that legislative goal of objectively reasonable, we can check those boxes. And if we do those, then the odds of us getting sued and losing are much less than if we have a record like Grants Pass. The other thing is pretty exciting is I am working on putting together a written agreement regarding the cottages property, which is where we would be putting our firehouse. I had actually drafted an agreement for the Murphy property that and negotiated with their lawyer. That was never signed for a couple of reasons, but it's a really good base for the other one I found. There's some differences there. There are contingencies in both, but the contingencies for the one property are a little bit different than the contingencies for the other. I expect to have that ready for you guys for your review and tweaks. The meeting next month, the regular scheduled meeting next month. I have worked with the planner for that project a lot in the past, and we have a really good working relationship. And he understands our objectives. He thinks they're completely reasonable, and we're receiving full cooperation from them. So I don't anticipate any hangups on that, and it should be ready hopefully sooner rather than later. The other piece of this is we're going to need to do a study. It is not as extensive as an urban growth boundary study. It is just that if we are moving a portion of our UGB, we have to demonstrate that the area that we're moving it to is the most reasonable and the location that meets the criteria, makes the most sense. Chad and Carol and I have spent a lot of time looking at satellite imagery of the city. The areas adjacent to the urban growth boundary, as well as we've kind of developed an understanding of what it would cost in order to build out in areas that might be adjacent but up the hill. And so I think that the planners that we bring in will be able to get to that result hopefully pretty efficiently. We want them to get to the right result. So obviously we're not prescribing that they could get any result. But their options are so limited from an infrastructure standpoint that this has been both obvious to us as well as DLCD staff who have looked at the same aerial, the same satellite photos that we have. My preference is that we use someone who has not previously looked at this, but someone who has a lot of experience in the area and who I think can efficiently deal with the issues. The reason we wouldn't use the people that did our housing needs analysis is because it kind of looks like everyone's that previously looked at this, including us and DLC, has come to the same conclusion. And for this process, it's really important that it be an independent, neutral look. So my advice is to bring in someone with coast UGB experience and that has not previously looked at the parcel. My recommendation is Friganisi and Associates. They're out of Portland, but they're handling the Rockaway Beach UGB expansion, and that is actually an urban growth boundary expansion, not a trade. And it is 10 acres for, if this will sound familiar to you, fire station and a city hall and a police station. Ours, just the fire station, the park, and the R1. This is less complex than an urban growth boundary expansion, but these are so seldom done that it's hard to know how much this is going to cost. We think a lot less than a UGB would cost. Our best guess is like 15 to 20,000. We think that's on the higher side, but it's a lot of like back of the envelope calculations that kind of Chad and Carol and I have looked at. I've been in touch with Scott Friganese to see whether their firm has the capacity to take this on if we were to decide to proceed with them. He let me know that they did. I had a few questions about their Rockaway Beach UGB expansion, just probably only questions that a land use lawyer would be interested in. But I think that he's got a great relationship with the DLCD rep for the coast. They really worked hand in glove on this for Rockaway Beach. And so I think that's likely our best bet. And we're at a level where this is technical enough of an issue that we can do a direct appoint if that's something that the council is interested in. Again, because Carol and I have both had multiple conversations with DLCD staff about this very result, we really think having a neutral third party come in order to do the GIS work and assessment is going to be the best way to make sure that we have met those neutrality, that the intent of that statute or the organ administrative rule is a neutral look at things. So we think that that's probably our best bet. And we would hope to work with them in the next month or so to kind of get them on board, and again, working with DLCD staff in order to make those determinations. But really nothing but good news about that cottage's location, and it really feels like everything's falling together. We're going to save $3 to $3.5 million. We're at the higher elevation. I remember Councilor Smith brought up this location a couple of years ago, and at that point, because it was outside of our urban growth boundary, and we didn't know that we had UGB west of the no-build line, it didn't look viable. Hindsight being 2020, if we had had that housing needs analysis and buildable land inventory at that point, I don't think we would have been having the Highlands conversation. I think that Councilor Smith's recommendation would have probably been the direction that we went in, just because there's so many fewer complications on this. So that's kind of my reports on a couple of different legal issues I think we'll be dealing with. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from anyone?
None at this time.
Well, thank you, Peter, very much. And I do appreciate all the education on the homelessness issue. And I think, we'll just learn as we go. And
right. And I think how we frame issues is always really matters. But on an issue such as this, where we have federal laws and we have, the ACLU has done enforcement actions, I think just demonstrating to our people and everyone else, we're transparently looking at this through a health and safety lens, and we're trying to help people. We're trying to help everyone. We're trying to keep the houseless safe. We're trying to keep folks that live here safe. And if we focus on health and safety, that's really our best opportunity to craft something that works for Gerhard and still complies with all these competing interests. If it gets framed as more of an enforcement issue, that really, or it looks at all punitive, that makes it a lot harder to defend. So to the extent that people feel that way, that's not the sort of public testimony that is helpful for us. What is very helpful for us is to focus on health and safety. So can't stress that enough. So I'll say it 10 times.
Okay, thank you. Chad, your report is next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll keep it relatively short. I had a couple of things to what Peter was talking about in regards to the fire station. We've also been getting proposals for geotechnical engineering services there. We have a proposal also coming in from an architect firm that also has kind of a specialized person that works with resiliency. So we're navigating through that. All of this will, come together, and then we'll start coming to the city council to help us make some of these decisions, how to spend some money, and how to move forward. So in regards to my report, I'll just hit some of the highlights. But first, Carrie Smith, you had requested that the city do a report on the incoming fire revenue and fire expenses. I worked on that for some time. And then with the transition of both with Justine coming in and with Chief Josh coming in, our reports didn't quite match. So next week, Josh, Justine, and I are going to go through that with a fine-tooth comb and have a much better report. But I just wasn't satisfied in bringing anything to you at this moment because one of our reports is not accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And we'll make sure we get to that. 4th of July help. Yes, Paulina, thank you. I've always had the last couple of years that Jeff put me in charge of the 4th of July help, which I actually kind of enjoy. We've had a great group of volunteers. They have a lot of fun. We give them an orange mask and they help get into the parade and keep it safe. And so if anybody would like to join that, it's a good time. You can reach me on my email at chadsweet@cityofgearhart. You can find it at on the website as well. But hopefully we're looking forward to things calming down as regards to COVID, and we can celebrate that. Code enforcement, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that's been going on in code enforcement. One of the major issues, we've talked a little bit about this with the A2 aquatic zone and the cutting of trees that happened on the end of Wellington beach approach. Just to let you know that conversation is going to be taken up by the Planning Commission, and it is on their agenda for their next meeting next Thursday. So Thursday after next. So I'm excited to do a little bit more work there. Some of the other code enforcement issues we have had a couple of permit for some tree cutting that went down. I had a comprehensive report from an arborist that needed to cut down some trees on the kind of the northeast part of town. That went all right. And building permits. One of my major parts of code enforcement is building permits. I review all incoming building permits and make sure that they are accurate as to land use and they're doing everything right. And with us building into a lot of these tiny or small or cramped or otherwise odd lots, we've been pretty busy. Both the planning committee, the public works department, myself, and our building department. I signed 6 new permits last week, and everything's going fairly smoothly, but it's quite busy. And the other aspect to code enforcement is I get a lot of calls from real estate agents or potential home buyers. And they're always very curious to know exactly what they can and cannot do with the property that they're looking at purchasing. A lot of requests for short-term vacation rentals, so we have a quick conversation about that. When you're spending a lot of money in Gearhart, they want to know exactly what they can and cannot do. So that's part of what keeps us busy, and sometimes neighbor issues. Neighbors maybe having a misunderstanding, if you will. 2 examples that have happened over the last couple of weeks were drainage issues, where one neighbor's house is draining their rainwater onto another. I've had 2 of those lately, and one of them has been resolved to satisfaction, and the other one we're still working on. So that's just a little taste of code enforcement that's been going on lately. Budget committee. I'm really happy with this year's budget. I think that the city of Gearhart's been efficient again, and I'll have a full report tomorrow for the budget committee meeting. But essentially, our revenues are up much, and our expenses are up also slightly. But we're definitely more positive on the revenue, And so we should be able to have a nice amount moving into cash carry forward and then start working on some of the projects that we've been keen on. And we're also looking at receiving revenues from the American Rescue Plan that was signed by Congress here recently. And potentially the city may receive, likely receive, $330,000. So I allocate that in certain places on the budget, depending on what we think that the guidance is going to be given to us as far as how we can spend those monies. But I look forward to having those conversations starting tomorrow at 5 p.m. So City Council, we have 3 budget committee members that are going to be there. We were short 2. We didn't receive any new applications. And the 3 other volunteers other than the City Council are past Councilor Al Carter, Bob Shortman, he's been around for a long time doing this with us, and Chris Block. And of note, they are all 3 coming up on the end of their term, so we may be looking for 5 new budget committee members, unless some of them would like to reapply. But things are looking good. And again, as of Monday, May 3rd, my dear Gail has officially retired. And she will be missed incredibly, but Justine is fitting in beautifully, and she's actually kind of holding me accountable on some things lately, not giving up. So that's pretty good. We were going to bring a pipe extension request for reserve funds, but Mark McFadden in the Public Works Department wants to take another look at that project before presenting it to you here. And it's just more about how to expand our water system for the health and supply of the city. Fire station update, I think we went through most of that. The only other note that I'd like to make is I did meet with the Shamrock Pines Homeowners Association about a week and a half ago and sat in the house with them and enjoyed a grilling from them of all sorts of questions of what the fire station could look like if we headed in that direction. And the short story is at the end of it, if it looks anything like the potential development could go, that they would actually be very much in favor for it. But they're going to be watching what we do and participating, which I think is great. Bridge path, we're still waiting for the water to go out. We've got a dedicated group of people that are ready to help. Work sessions of note, the next one is Tuesday, June 29th. And tentatively, we have council goals. That's pretty well for sure. We're going to need to do that. And then potentially is the noise and or the homeless conversation. And just so you know, Jeff Bowman has had some signs made around town with the times that contractors can be working around the area. So just a nice reminder for the contractors. And then he'll begin doing a little bit more enforcement as needed. Landscape is coming. That's on the website. Some tickets are still available for the city Gearhart folks. I've got an email into them. I was a little confused about a couple of the ways that they're offering tickets, but I'm looking forward to having them respond. And then Christy and I will work on changing the announcement on the blog if we need to, and we'll reblog that. The audit is continuing on with Justine here and our accountant helper and our new auditors. Things are starting to roll, and I'll have more to report on that at the next meeting, but it should be coming fairly soon. That's all that I have for right now, folks, unless you have any questions. Okay, thank you.
Hearing no questions, we'll move on to correspondence. There were 2 items in our packet. One was an email, it's about a month old, from Mr. Morey, and the other was a submission from Mr. Nagel with regard to the business committee. And going to move on to visitors, and we do have on the agenda.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I have a question. So the one addressed to the business committee, should I respond to that?
I did not respond to that one.
My question was, should the response come from the small business committee?
Yeah, that would be great if you want to go ahead and respond to his question about the downtown area.
Okay. And I'll send a copy to the council and Chad, and I don't know if Peter wants a copy before it goes out. I'm not planning on anything controversial, but
I'm happy to take a look if you want. I trust you though to not do anything controversial.
I will do my utmost not to.
So then next is the visitor section, and we have Dave Larmuth here to talk about Recology's rate review. Go ahead.
Yes, I saw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, Mr. Sweet, you want to start us off?
No, go ahead, Dave. Take it from here. You're an old friend around here now.
I'm old, at least. So yeah, I think we're friends. We can all be friends here. Good evening. I'm Dave Larmuth. I'm the rate analyst for Recology Western Oregon. You have in your packet several documents, and we can go as much into detail as you want. But I think the cover letter has most of the important information. Number one, we're proposing to keep rates the same this year, and that's the short version. As you know, we had a rate adjustment that was delayed at our request last year. And when we made that request last March, we sort of figured that by September things would be back to actual normal, and it turned out to be we were freshly out of fully locked down to a less locked down, and obviously back in March when we were proposing for this year, we're hopeful, but we're also trying to be realistic on what that the new normal will look like for us. We hope that our business will be able to fully open at some point this year. We hope that folks will be able to come back to the coast and visit as much as they want to, and because they want to, and not as what we saw some of last year, where they got the impression that the coast was the only place they could visit, and we ended up with folks on the side of the road and up in the logging roads, and you name it, there were folks where you least expect them, and behind the wheel of a garbage truck. I mean, everybody likes surprises, but the garbage truck drivers do not care for surprises all that much. Speaking of that, we managed to find a way to keep all the routes running this past year, keep drivers in the trucks. We had to get creative a few times. We did have some folks that had to miss some time because of COVID exposures, and our staff was, other than our shop staff and our drivers, everyone else has been working from home with varying degrees of success. We've had some real challenges working with customers on the phones at times. I think they're better. Those problems are, I guess, fixed at the moment, but there always seems to be a new one. And the explanation that we get from our IT folks, I never understand. So I've asked them for like two weird things. Phone's good? Oh, phone's bad. Okay, phone's bad. So if you do ever need to reach us, email is often a faster way to get us, depending on how many folks we have working the phones. There's one person whose primary job is filtering through the emails as they come in. So sometimes if it's an easy question, you may get your answer via email faster than if someone next to you placed a call in on the telephone. So we'd ask you to keep that in mind. The other thing I'd mentioned is that, as we, that Well, we were fortunate. We understand that a lot of our customers and neighbors were not, whether they lost jobs or family or were sick themselves. So it was a tough time. So as part of that, we didn't suspend or stop service for any customers through December. So in January, we started talking to some of the commercial customers. Some folks we hadn't heard from one way or another. We'd asked people just to contact us and give us an idea, so we knew who was still around and hoping to reopen, and who had packed up and moved away but just hadn't told us. We don't want to bill people for service they're not using. On the residential side, we continue to work with customers to again, same thing, just let us know you're there and you need the service, and we've been working with them on payment plans and more flexible terms than we would normally offer. And there are some folks that whatever we call or email or leave them a note, we don't hear from them, and unfortunately for some of those folks, if we stop providing service to their cart, that's usually a good, I guess, trigger for them to contact us if they haven't responded to letters or calls. And so it's not our favorite tool to use, but it can be effective for folks that are busy, or that where we go to their spam folder and they don't answer their phone because it doesn't show up on their phone as someone that they need or want to talk to. So we are trying to be considerate and gentle in that approach, but it is, like I said, sort of our tool of last resort. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions you have. There are some things going on at the state legislature. Mr. Watts mentioned some things on his end. We've got a few things we're watching on the recycling end of things, but not everybody cares as deeply about the details of some of those things. So I'll go into it if you want, but otherwise I'm happy to take other questions you have.
Any comments or questions from the counselors? Okay.
Not for me.
Thank you, Dave, very much. Thank you, I guess,
bet.
for not raising our rates this year. We appreciate everything you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chad, do we have others who have sent you an email?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not.
Okay. I can quickly go through the people here and just call those people out. And if they would like to speak, unmute your phone. The first one on my list would be Celeste. And the next is Darcy. Next is Bob Morey. Tom Thies. Trissa Como. And caller 2. And caller 3. Okay, I don't hear any responses, so I'm going to move on. And we have no ordinances or resolutions. We have no old business listed. We have no new business listed. Next would be our visitor feedback. And I'll just go through those visitors one more time for a 3-minute feedback on the meeting specifically, or items that came up. And so this is Celeste. This would be your chance to give us meeting feedback. And Darcy. Bob Morey. Tom Thies. Trista Como. Caller 2. Or caller 3. Okay, so nothing there. Council concerns. Start with Rita.
Well, I don't have any complaints or concerns, but I want to address my personal issue with the Gerhardt wildlife. We moved here because we want to be close to wildlife, and then when it comes in and wreaks havoc on us, we go, oh my gosh, it's wildlife. The Neocoxy beaver saga, they have not only chopped down a couple of trees, but they've decimated an entire laurel hedge. So now my neighbors can see into my backyard, and I don't want to do anything because I want the beavers to be here, but I'm just letting City Hall know that if they have any beaver complaints, just deal with it, because that's what I'm doing, and that's all I have to say.
Julie, no.
It looks like the bombing of Beirut. I'm just letting you know.
And it's a laurel hedge.
Yes, it's a laurel, kind of a tree and a complete laurel hedge. So now that the neighbors can see into my backyard, they're wanting to not complain, they're really nice neighbors, but they want me to get rid of my compost bin. So I don't know.
Aye, aye, aye.
Yeah, well, it was a whole lot better when they couldn't see. But they're nice neighbors. I love them.
Okay, and Dan Jesse.
I have nothing.
Carrie.
I have no concerns, but I would like to mention to everybody that the Fraser property, the Highland property, the Cottages property was mentioned by Paulina and myself several years ago. And it wasn't just me. I just wanted people to be aware that Paulina and I were working on the same page at that time with that property. So I just wanted people to know that.
Thank you, Carrie. And Brent.
Yes. Rita, are you sorry that beaver coats are not more popular these days?
I mean, I love the beaver. I just have to learn how to deal with it. And I actually have a beaver coat of my mother's. So what can I say?
Okay, well, I do have one thing to bring up, and I've had this issue raised by many people in many different circumstances, and I know that the city has discussed it in the past, but I don't know what the council's position or any actions that have been taken in the past, but it's regarding a separate Gerhardt zip code for the post office. And there's been a recent flurry of misdelivered mail, incorrect databases that default to Seaside and can't be updated. And so there has been a request to renew an effort to get a separate zip code. And I know that that is a federal issue. U.S. Postal Service is not a City of Gerhardt department. but possibly a resolution on the part of the city expressing a desire for us to have a separate zip code and use that to approach our federal congressional delegation to see what we can do to make that happen. So I'm wanting to be educated on history and how do we pursue this.
I have a bunch of papers and I worked on that about 6 or 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. And I know Christy also has looked into it. So I'd be happy to go over that with you offline. You know, it's not easily done, but there are mechanisms for that. So we can review that and bring it back to the council.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
I have an observation, and I just want to flag this because I think this is going to be an issue. Is that Portland State measured that we would need like 50 additional housing units over the next, or they thought there would be demand for like 50 additional housing units over the next 50 years. And Chad got 6 building permits last week. And so I think once we have our US census numbers, which I think are going to show a significantly higher population than Portland State's estimates, we're going to need to go to them with the housing data that we actually have, as far as what has been built over the last 5 years. And they're going to need to look at their numbers because the lots that people are trying to build on right now are, you know, oddly shaped, less than ideal. It sure doesn't seem like we have enough of them. We've already looked at our housing needs analysis, buildable inventory once, that chopped it in half. But if these numbers are at all representative of what demand there's going to be in the future, then they're going to have to look at the whole Northern Oregon coast and what we really need, because housing is a crisis at this point, and I defer to Dan Jesse on this issue because he's closer to it than I am. But it is a supply and demand issue as far as buildable lots at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we probably need more, you know, whether it's campground or manufactured housing, what have you, to hit the people, the working folks. But I mean, it's going to take a collective countywide effort in my mind, because I just see it becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to reviewing the census information.
I'll give you a heads up on the small business survey. A recurring theme from business owners in Gerhardt was the lack of affordable housing is a real obstacle for hiring and retaining employees.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to address that somehow.
Okay, we've reached the end of our agenda. Thank you all, everybody, for all the hard work. Staff and counselors all, I think we're all working really hard, trying to just get what we can done here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn the May 5th council session.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Feliz Cinco de Mayo.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Chad, you gonna try and stop the recording? You're muted.